Story 1. I should have trusted my instincts the first night it happened. But when strange things happen inside your own home, you tell yourself it's nothing. You find excuses. You cling to logic. Because the alternative, the idea that something terrible is lurking inside the places you think are safe, is unbearable. It started with a knock. A faint, dull knocking noise that seemed to come from the kitchen stove. At first, we laughed about it. My wife, Claire, joked that it was probably just old pipes rattling from the heat. My daughter, Emily, pretended to knock back whenever she heard it, giggling as if she was talking to a ghost. The sound was never loud, just gentle thuds in the background, like someone rapping lightly on metal from the other side. But after a while, the knocking became consistent. Every time the stove turned on, without fail, the sound began. Rhythmical. Almost impatient. One evening, I leaned close while Claire boiled water for tea. The knocks seemed clearer to me than they had before. They weren't random. There was a pattern, a shape to them, like syllables, almost like words being tapped out. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Claire frowned. "You're letting Emily's ghost stories get into your head. It's just the stove." But I couldn't shake the feeling. Then came the cries. It was late one Saturday. Emily had begged for hot chocolate before bed. When I turned the knob on the stove, the blue flame hesitated, as if something resisted its spark. The clicking went on too long, and instead of the usual sharp whoosh of ignition, a muffled noise spilled out. A cry, soft and low, coated in pain. I froze. The flame lit after a moment, but I swear the sound had come first. Claire heard it too. She went pale, her hand clutched to her chest as she muttered, "It sounded like crying." We both forced ourselves to stay calm for Emily's sake, but that night neither of us slept much. The next days grew worse. The stove refused to light unless we heard the cries first. No matter who tried, me, Claire, or even Emily, when she sneaked attempt at making toast, the same thing happened. Muffled crying, then ignition. Emily, of course, was curious. Too curious. She'd been the first to turn this into a sort of game. "What if there's someone really in there?" she asked one dinner. Her eyes were shining, but I noticed a nervous shake in her voice. "We're calling a repairman," I told her, but deep down, I already knew. No repairman would explain this. 3 nights later, everything changed. I was in the living room when I heard Claire scream. I rushed to the kitchen and saw her pulling Emily back from the stove. The oven door was open, the burners off, yet the kitchen smelled like smoke. "What happened?" I shouted. Emily's cheeks were wet with tears. Claire's face was white as paper. She said the fire made a face. I didn't understand until later that night. I couldn't sleep, so I went back to the kitchen alone. I knew I shouldn't. I knew some part of me wanted to prove myself wrong, to prove it was just tricks of the mind. I turned the knob carefully. Click, click, click. The flame burst open, and in that second my chest tightened. The fire didn't dance randomly. It curled, flickered, and pulled into the shape of a screaming face. Its mouth was wide, eyes like hollow sockets, the flame shivering as though trapped behind glass. And I heard it, more clearly than ever before. A voice. "Help me." I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The stove sputtered out instantly, plunging the room into darkness. That week, I insisted we stop using the kitchen. We ordered takeout. We warned Emily never to go near the stove. But each night, faint clicks came on their own, like someone trying to spark the burners without touching them. Sometimes I woke up and swore I heard whispers carrying through the vents. Claire begged me to call someone. A repairman, a priest, anyone. But I couldn't. Some deep, irrational part of me was afraid of what they would uncover. Then, 2 nights ago, we woke to screaming. Not from the fire this time. From Emily. We found her standing in the kitchen barefoot, the whole room glowing faintly blue. The burners had somehow lit themselves, flames steady but unnatural. each one forming a faint image of faces, distorted, warped, and crying. Dozens of them. Emily pointed at the stove, sobbing. "They asked me to let them out. They said they're inside the gas." That was when I smelled it. The gas was on full blast, but it wasn't just a normal leak. The air was heavy, choking, like it wanted to crawl down our throats. I dragged Emily out while Claire turned everything off. But ever since, the stove hasn't stopped. Even unplugged, even disconnected, we hear it. Constant, gentle tapping from inside. The knocks, the cries, never ending. Now I sit awake every night, listening to the kitchen. The knocking is growing louder, more desperate. Sometimes when the house is quiet enough, the voice carries through clear as day. "Let us out." And the worst part? I'm starting to wonder if it's not just one voice in there. It's many. And they're getting louder. Story 2. You probably won't believe me when I tell you my refrigerator tried to eat me. But I swear every word is true. It started with the sound. Or the movement, I guess. I was closing the fridge one night after grabbing a beer when I noticed the door didn't shut with its usual pop. Instead, it moved in slow, like it wasn't closing but being pulled. And the strangest part? It looked like the fridge was inhaling. I froze with my hand still on the handle, staring at the way the rubber seal sucked inward as though the fridge had taken a deep breath. I even laughed nervously, convincing myself it was just suction or something mechanical I didn't understand. But deep down, it felt wrong. The next morning, I opened the fridge to find that my leftover pizza from the night before was covered in mold. Not just spots, but a thick black carpet of it, as if it had been sitting there for weeks. Even the edges of the cheese looked like they were melting away. I told myself the fridge must be broken, maybe the temperature wasn't regulated, but then I checked the milk. Expired. The chicken. Spoiled. The vegetables looked like they had been dipped in ink, soft and slimy. It didn't make sense. Food couldn't rot overnight like that. For the first time, I thought about throwing the whole fridge out, buying a new one, but I didn't. Instead, I cleaned it thoroughly, scrubbed away the mold, and turned the temperature all the way down. A rational answer was easier than the truth that was creeping into my mind. That night, I heard it again. I was lying in bed, drifting near sleep, when I heard something from the kitchen. A sound like sucking. A wet, slow slurp, as though something was enjoying a thick meal. I sat up fast, heart racing. For a while, I just listened, convincing myself it must be the pipes. Or maybe my neighbor through the walls. But when I crept to the kitchen, the sound was louder, clearer. It was coming from the refrigerator. Leaning close, I put my ear near the door. The wet slurping stopped, as if it had realized I was listening. My chest tightened. My ears rang with silence so heavy I nearly convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then, right as I started to pull away, I heard it. A gulp, a wet, heavy gulp from inside. The following days were worse. Every piece of food, no matter when I put it in, was ruined by the next morning. Black mold, rot. The stench stuck to the air, even after hours of cleaning. I couldn't stand it anymore. I felt like I was slowly starving, ordering takeout every day just to keep my distance from the thing humming in my kitchen. One evening, exhausted and desperate, I caved. I told myself I was overthinking again. I opened the fridge to grab milk for coffee, ignoring the smell that wafted out. That was when it happened. The moment I reached in, the door snapped shut on me, hard. My other hand shot out to push it open, but it was stuck, heavy as a vault door. My wrist was pinned inside, and the cold interior pressed against my skin. Then I felt it. Something warm, something fleshy sliding across my hand, like the inside wasn't metal anymore. It pulsed, soft and damp, almost like a tongue tasting me. I yanked, screaming, but whatever was inside held me back. The fleshy warmth tightened, pulling. The fridge seemed deeper than usual, bottomless, as if my hand had passed into some endless breathing cavity. The sucking began again, louder this time, wet slurps right against my skin, followed by a thick, hungry gulp. It was eating me. Desperate, I slammed my shoulder against the door, again and again until it burst open. I stumbled back, my arm slick with something dark, something that smelled like spoiled meat. I looked at the fridge in horror. It sat there as if nothing had happened. Inside, the shelves were bare except for one thing, the milk carton. It was open, and it was empty. I didn't sleep that night. I wanted to throw the fridge out, but the thought of touching it again made me sick. I tried to call for help in the morning, repairs, disposal, anything, but when I picked up the phone, the line was dead. That heavy sound started again, a slow, deliberate inhale from the kitchen. I walked in cautiously, praying it had all been some awful hallucination. But when I looked at the fridge, I saw droplets sliding down its seal, thick and red, like blood leaking through. The fridge shuddered, the door rattling like it wanted to open on its own. Then, whispered through the hum of the motor, I heard words. One whisper, wet and soft but clear as day. Hungry. Now I can't go near it. I can't eat. I can't breathe when I'm in the same room. It's louder every night, slurping and gulping, pulling the air into itself. I've locked the door to the kitchen, but still, I hear it. The heavy, wet inhale like it's waiting. And I know one day soon, the locks won't matter. Because whatever is inside that fridge isn't satisfied yet. And this time it won't stop at my hand. Story 3. I always thought the kitchen was the safest place in the house. It's where meals are cooked, where laughter usually lingers, where families come together. But now, I can't step inside ours without feeling watched, like every blade in that wooden block is waiting for me to look away. You think I'm exaggerating. I wish I were. But the knives, they move on their own. It began subtly. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and noticed the knives in the block seemed off. The paring knife was in the steak knife slot, the meat cleaver tilted differently. I figured it was Claire, my wife. She's meticulous when cleaning up and probably put things back without much thought. But when I mentioned it, she shook her head. I didn't touch them. Emily, our youngest at 8, swore she hadn't either. Neither had Michael, our teenage son, who barely lifted a finger in the kitchen even when we begged him to. Maybe you did it and forgot, Claire teased, trying to brush it off. I wanted to believe her. But the thought stuck in the back of my mind like a splinter. The next morning, I noticed it again. This time, all the knives were rearranged neatly, each one slightly angled toward the edge of the counter. It was as if someone had been presenting them, offering them. That should have been enough to make us panic, but we didn't. People ignore things when they don't make sense. It's easier to laugh them away than accept something impossible is happening under your roof. Until the third morning. I was pouring myself coffee when Claire froze. Look, she whispered. The knives weren't just arranged differently this time, they weren't random. All of them, every blade, was tilted in the block so that their points angled precisely toward me. I laughed nervously and tried to dismiss it as shadows, but my skin crawled. They hadn't been like that before I went to bed. Whatever was doing this, it was watching us. Over the next week, it continued. Each morning, they shifted again, pointing at whoever had been standing nearest the block the night before. One day it was Claire, the knives sharp and gleaming in her direction. Another day, Michael. Once, even Emily. All those blades aimed at her little chair at the kitchen counter. Claire begged me to get rid of them. Throw the whole block out, she said. But every night I told myself we'd do it in the morning. Somehow, I always forgot. The knives had a way of slipping my mind after dusk, as if they didn't want me thinking about them once the sun went down. That's when I started hearing noises, too. the faint scrape of metal against wood at ungodly hours. I'd sit in bed wide awake, listening to my family's breathing, when I'd hear it again, a knife being drawn, slid back in, slowly, carefully. Then came the morning that ended any illusion of safety. I came downstairs bleary-eyed to find Claire standing frozen in the kitchen doorway. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just pointed. The knife block sat on the counter, empty slots glaring like missing teeth. At first I thought maybe they'd spilled, but then I saw the table, our kitchen table, where we always ate breakfast as a family. And there, pressed straight into the wood of Emily's spot, sat the butcher knife, the biggest one we owned. The metal blade gleamed, its point buried into the grain right between her placemat and chair. Like someone, or something, had placed it there deliberately, waiting for her. We didn't use the kitchen that day, or the next. The block remained full, untouched, but I swear the knives gleamed brighter now, as if excited we'd noticed. One night, I caught Michael staring at them, his face blank. When I called his name, he startled like he'd woken from a dream. I don't know why," he whispered. "I felt like they wanted me to pick one up." That was when I made my decision. The next morning, before anyone woke, I'd throw them out. Knife block, every blade, gone for good. But I never got the chance. Because when I crept down early, planning to pack them up, I stopped cold. The block was empty. Every slot vacant, and from somewhere deep in the house, I heard it. A sound. Metal sliding against wood. One knife being sharpened slowly, carefully, patiently. Now, I don't know where they are. Not in the kitchen, not in the drawers. But every so often, I'll notice one missing spoon replaced by something sharper in the silverware tray, or hear a faint, metallic scrape in the hallway when no one's there. I haven't told the kids the truth. I can't. But I've started locking our bedroom door at night, even though I know it won't help. Because whatever's moving them, whoever they're pointing at next, they're only waiting, and sooner or later, one of those knives will be waiting in someone's hand. Story 4. I used to love cooking. It was the one steady comfort in my life after my wife passed. Cooking dinner for my son, Daniel, gave me purpose every night. But these days, I can't even bring myself to stand near the stove. I can't hear boiling water without feeling sick to my stomach. Because now, when the water boils, it speaks to me. And lately, it's been asking for Daniel. It began innocently enough. One Tuesday evening, I set water to boil for pasta. As I walked back to chop vegetables, I thought I heard something faint beneath the bubbling. Soft, like murmurs, rolling under the hiss of steam. I leaned closer. Whispers. I jerked upright, heart thudding, then laughed at myself. Pipes. Old metal sounding off with the heat. That's all. Still, when I served Daniel his pasta, I kept glancing at the pot, certain I'd heard something alive in there. The next night, it happened again, louder this time. I heard it distinctly when the bubbles broke the surface, like an echoing breath drawn through invisible lips. Gree. I froze. But when Daniel called from the living room asking when dinner would be ready, I plastered on a smile and told him soon. It became a pattern. Boil water, hear the whispers. I tried different pots, everything from steel to ceramic, but it didn't matter. No matter what I used, as soon as the bubbles swirled, voices swam just beneath them, sometimes frantic, sometimes stretched and slow, like they were savoring each syllable. And the words, feed us, hungry. So empty. My hands would shake on the wooden spoon until I forced myself to laugh. What's next? A haunted microwave? I said out loud one night, anything to trick myself into calm. Daniel grinned, not understanding. He thought I was telling a joke. I didn't tell him the truth, that the sounds I heard were growing louder every day. One night, I decided not to boil water. I microwaved soup instead, safe, quiet. But as soon as I set the steaming bowl on the table, I heard it. Whispers rising from the broth itself, shaping the rippling surface into faint letters before my eyes. Hungry. My stomach dropped. The whispers didn't need the pot anymore. They lived in the heat itself. I should have stopped cooking altogether. But life with a kid isn't that easy. Daniel had to eat, and frozen dinners could only go so far. That Friday, exhausted, I boiled water again. For macaroni of all things. Daniel's favorite. Quick and simple, I muttered to myself. But the moment the water bubbled, my kitchen filled with sound, not faint this time, but layered, dozens of voices snarling together. The steam rose thick, curling along the ceiling like smoke. Hungry. Feed us. Hungry. I wanted to run, but I couldn't drag Daniel into this nightmare without proof. I told myself I'd throw the pot away, disconnect the stove, but curiosity nailed me there. When I dared to look inside, I staggered back. It wasn't water boiling anymore. It was black. Thick, bubbling tar rolling with grotesque blisters that popped on the surface. The smell hit me next, like burning flesh, charred meat, sickly sweet and rancid all at once. Then the whispers changed. They started chanting Daniel's name over and over. Daniel. 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 The pot popped violently, splashing the counter with black liquid that hissed where it touched the metal. That was enough. I grabbed Daniel from the living room and dragged him outside without explanation. We sat in the car all night under the yellow street lamp glow, me holding him close, both of us wide awake. The next morning, I gathered my courage and stepped back inside with a hammer, ready to smash the stove, the pots, anything. But the kitchen was clean. No foul smell. No black tar. Just the pot, spotless and empty, sitting in the sink as though it had been washed. I would have believed I'd hallucinated. Except for one thing. The table. Where Daniel sits, right in front of his little breakfast plate. The wood was charred black. A perfect ring, as though something hot and wet had been set there, and faintly etched into the scorched surface, just visible in the daylight, was one word: hungry. Since then, I refuse to cook. Daniel eats takeout, sandwiches, cereal, anything but boiled food. But sometimes, when I pour cereal, the milk froths strangely. The bubbles form shapes. I slam the cup away before I can read the words. The stove remains cold, but the whispers haven't stopped. Now I hear them no matter where I am, in the hum of the faucet, in the hiss of the shower, in the gurgle of the bathroom pipes. Always the same message, swelling louder each night. Hungry. Feed us. And lately, disturbingly, a change. Sometimes they don't say us, sometimes they say me, and always they say Daniel's name. I keep Daniel close now, locking his bedroom door at night, keeping knives and anything sharp away. I don't know what it wants, or why it's chosen us, but I've begun to realize something's coming. The voices are growing impatient. The last time I dared to listen too closely, the boiling chorus did not just chant, it screamed. And this time, they didn't just whisper to me. I heard Daniel repeat the words in his sleep, his lips moving in the dark. Hungry. Feed us. Story 5. I always thought the scariest sound you could hear in the middle of the night was a creak in the hallway, or whispers from an empty room. I was wrong. The scariest sound is the quiet clinking of pots and pans downstairs when you know, absolutely know, that everyone in your house is asleep. It was 3 a.m. when I first heard it. I'd been tossing and turning in my room, half awake, when I caught the faint scrape of a spatula against a pan, the hiss of something sizzling. At first, I told myself it must be Dad. He worked strange hours, so maybe he'd come home early and was fixing himself something to eat. But then I realized something. Dad wasn't in town that week. He was 3 states away on business. My heart thudded. Mom never cooked at night, and my little sister wouldn't even dare leave her room after dark. So who the hell was in the kitchen? Curiosity fought against fear until finally I slipped out of bed, creeping to the stairs. The smell hit me before the sight did. It smelled good. Too good. Rich, savory, and sweet all at once, but metallic in a way that made the back of my throat tighten, like the smell of raw blood. I patted down slowly, the faint glow from the open kitchen doorway painting the stairs yellow. Then I saw it. A figure. Someone was at the stove, humming. A low, tuneless hum, the kind of sound people make when they don't know you're watching. The figure's back was turned to me, tall and shadowy with shoulders hunched. Every so often, its arm lifted, stirring something in a pot, then tapping the spoon against the pan. I gripped the railing hard, my legs threatening to fold. Who was in my house? My fight or flight screamed at me to run, to wake Mom, to call the cops, but the smell pulled me forward. I edged closer until I was nearly at the kitchen door. That's when the figure spoke. Not actual words, but humming sounds arranged so gently it almost was a song, almost soothing, almost human. Shaking, I reached for the light switch and flicked it on. The kitchen filled with bright white light, but the figure was gone. Where it had stood, the stove sizzled with a pan full of meat. On the counter sat a plate, steam curling lazily upward from a mound of food. And the smell, God, the smell. It was intoxicating. My stomach growled, and I realized I hadn't eaten since dinner at 6. I should have run then, should have screamed, shaken Mom awake. But instead, I crossed the kitchen, drawn in by warmth and hunger. The plate was neatly arranged, slices of something dark and seared, glistening as though basted, surrounded by a sauce that stained the edges of the dish red. I picked up a fork. Just one bite, I told myself, just to see. The taste exploded in my mouth. Unlike anything I'd ever had, rich, tender, savory beyond words. The metallic tang only made it deeper, addictive. My brain lit up with hunger and comfort all at once, every nerve buzzing with the need for more. Then, mid-chew, something clicked against my teeth. Hard. I choked slightly, pulled the bite from my mouth and stared at it. Caught in the meat fibers was a small, pale shape. I fumbled with trembling fingers and pulled it free. A tooth, a human tooth. I dropped the fork, bile rushing into my throat as I staggered back. The plate clattered against the floor with a wet splash of red sauce. My stomach lurched violently as realization hit. The smell, the meat, that sickening metallic tang. It wasn't beef. The tooth rolled across the tile, bouncing once before settling at the base of the counter, and from the corner of the kitchen, where the light didn't quite reach, I heard it, the humming. Soft at first, then louder, as if whoever or whatever had been there before was still there. Watching me, I bolted upstairs, slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and crawled under the covers as though they could protect me. I didn't sleep, not for a second. Come morning, I crept downstairs, praying it had all been some nightmare. But the stove was spotless. No meat, no sauce, no plate, no sign anything had happened, except for the tooth. It was still lying on the kitchen floor. Since then, it's happened again. Not every night, but often enough that I dread 3 a.m. That same humming, that same metallic smell filling the air, curling up the stairs and pulling me awake even when I fight it. Sometimes I hear more than humming now. Sometimes it whispers words while it cooks, though I can't make them out. Last night, I stayed in bed with my pillow pressed over my head. I swore I wouldn't look, wouldn't go near that kitchen again. But when I finally dared to open my eyes, there on my nightstand, sitting on a clean white plate, was a single slice of meat, steaming, fresh, waiting for me. And on top of it, balanced perfectly like a garnish, was another human tooth. Story 6. People always say the kitchen is the heart of the home. For us, it turned out to be true. The problem was Our kitchen's heart was still beating. And it was hungry. It started small, like most horrors do. I remember noticing the first hairline crack near the base of the counter just after breakfast one morning. I hardly thought about it. An old house shifts, tiles crack, no big deal. But then, the next day, there were more. Jagged lines worming across the floor like lightning frozen in ceramic. And something about them chilled me. The cracks weren't just cracks. Inside them, dark veins ran deep, squirming like something alive, pushing outward as though reaching for the rest of the room. I swore they hadn't been there the night before. When I mentioned it, Claire shrugged. Tiles break. Houses settle. Don't overthink it. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't stop staring at those black, pulsing lines. Within days, the kitchen began to change. Drawers opened on their own, cutlery resting half out, jingling faintly at night as though invisible hands were rummaging. Twice I came down in the morning to find shattered dishes spread across the counter, fragments arranged in vague shapes, spirals, patterns, almost skeletal outlines. And then came the salt. One evening, a shaker tipped itself over without anyone touching it. The salt spilled in a neat, deliberate pile across the counter. When I leaned closer, a shiver knifed down my spine. It wasn't random. The crystals had fallen into the unmistakable shape of a rib cage. By the end of that week, the cracks in the floor had widened so much we couldn't ignore them. The kitchen tiles bowed under our feet, groaning like something alive. When I stood on one, I swore I felt it give. A faint rise and fall like breathing. A foul smell started to leak up from the gaps, acrid and sour, like rotting meat kept too long in the sun. Every time the stove heated or hot water steamed, the gaps exhaled, filling the entire house with the reek of decay. We stuffed towels under the kitchen door just to keep it contained. Claire wanted to leave, sell the house. I told her it was just pipes, foundation, rot. Anything but what it was. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew. The kitchen wasn't breaking. It was waking. The night we lost Rex, the dog, we finally understood. He'd been barking more than usual, fur bristling, nails scraping across the tiles as he growled at the cracks. That evening, while the kids slept upstairs, Rex snarled at the widening gaps like he wanted to tear into them. We laughed nervously, trying to distract him, until suddenly, the laughter stuck in our throats. The cracks yawned wider, too wide for this house, splitting the floor, and Rex's paws slipped. I lunged, clawing to grab his collar, but the floor opened beneath him with a sound that wasn't stone or tile, but flesh. A wet, sucking rip as the dog was dragged down, swallowed by darkness. His yelp echoed once, twice, then stopped. I screamed until my throat burned, pounding at the floor, begging. Claire's nails bled as she pulled at the tiles, desperate. But nothing came back. The gap sealed itself with a tremor, as if the floor had just finished a meal, and from beneath us, echoing faint but clear, came Rex's whimpers. Still alive, still trapped. We tried to leave after that. God knows we tried. But each door we opened slammed shut again, cabinets striking our shoulders, drawers slashing open like blades. The kitchen wouldn't let us out. It owned the house now. At night, the gaps whisper. Yes, whisper. Breathy sighs push up foul air, and words I wish I could unhear. Hungry, feed, hungry. The kids hear them too. Emily cries in her room whenever the whispers say her name. Each day the cracks spread farther, climbing the walls, creeping into the hall. The veins pulse like feeding tubes, dragging the house into the kitchen's open mouth. I tried throwing food into the gaps, steaks, chickens, entire pots of soup. Each time the cracks smacked shut with a wet clatter, devouring. For a few hours after, the house would fall still, almost peaceful. But soon enough, the whispers returned, louder. The kitchen didn't want food. It wanted living flesh. Tonight, the air is thicker than ever. The tiles bulge as if something beneath is pushing up. The dishes keep shattering, forming nothing but piles of bones. The salt spills itself, spelling names now. My children's names, Claire's name, and mine. The house groans with hunger, each breath swelling through the gaps. From beneath, I hear Rex crying still, muffled and far away, a warning wrapped inside his whimpers. We've barricaded the door, though I know it's pointless. The kitchen doesn't need to open doors. It will simply open us. I can hear it now, rising through the floor, a roaring stomach. Drawers are rattling, cupboards are moaning. The stove ignited itself an hour ago and hasn't gone out, flames hissing like a tongue, and the cracks beneath my feet are widening. The kitchen is starving, and it's decided tonight it won't go hungry. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror.